In this tutorial, we're going to take a look at auto-incrementing primary keys. So I'm going to drop my users table again, get rid of it, and I've got to actually write drop table users in there. And now I'm going to recreate the table similar to what we had before. So what we had before was something like this: create table users, and the columns are ID int, which is the primary key. We've got name text and email text. But actually, for the purposes of this tutorial, let's just have a name in there because it'll save a little bit of time. The only sort of problem with this, which is a sort of problem, is that the ID field here, we have to invent a unique value for it. Now, sometimes that's what you want. Sometimes you're running some software or something and you naturally get an ID when a user creates a new account, let's say, on your system, and you want to insert that ID into the database. And there are ways, of course, of doing queries and checking that the new ID is unique, this sort of thing. But sometimes it's nice if you can just get MySQL to invent an ID for you. And you can do that by making a primary key auto-increment. So let's drop this users table again. I'm going to go back to the stuff that I just typed. And I'm going to, after primary key, so before the comma, I'm going to type auto_increment. So this is a very MySQL specific keyword. And what it does is it means that you can do inserts without specifying an ID. And the ID that will be assigned to each row will just be incremented or increased from whatever the last value that was used was. And it's going to start at 1. So let's create that table now, and we'll say insert into users. And now I won't specify an ID. So I'll just specify the one column we've got now, which is, at the moment, it's just the name column. And we'll say values. And by the way, I did a bit of checking, and apparently, although I've always mixed double and single quotes, except where I was using a database that really wouldn't accept one or the other, apparently single quotes are considered a kind of default standard thing to use in SQL, but MySQL seems to be just fine with double quotes. Anyway, let's insert something into there. Let's insert Bob. That's the quotes around your text values, your string values. So we'll insert that, and we'll do a select star from users. Select star from users. And we can see that we've inserted Bob, and even though we didn't specify an ID this time, and even though it's a primary key, so it has to have a value, we can see that because it's auto-increment, it's automatically assigned Bob the value of 1. And of course, if you insert another value, let's insert another one, then it's going to go to 2, as you might expect. So let's take a look here, and now it's 2. Now, MySQL won't allow 0 in an auto-increment column. So let's take a look at that. Supposing we do specify the ID and we specify it, let's say, as 3 or any number greater than 2, that's going to work. And we can do the select now. And we see that the ID value of 3, which we have specified for this auto-increment column now, MySQL will accept that just fine. It's going to accept any valid value here, which is going to be anything other than 0, or some value that we've already got in this column, or some value that's too big to fit in there, which would be a really big number. But if we try to insert 0, we get different results. Now, this depends on your settings. I'm pretty sure that in the past I've tried to do this and it just hasn't run the query. So I'm sure that's configurable. But if we just run this now and we do a select on it with the settings that I've got here, which is pretty much it's just the out of the box settings that it came with. What happens is if you specify 0 for an auto increment column, as we just did, just right here, then it just kind of ignores the 0 and it proceeds as though you hadn't specified any value for it. So it will give it the next available ID in the sequence. Okay, so that's it for this tutorial. Have a go yourself. Create a table with a primary key, if you want to, that is. Try inserting into it, and also see what happens if you try to insert 0 on your system. Maybe it won't run the query, or maybe it will just ignore it and insert an auto-incremented value in any case. So until next time, happy coding.